with Bill O'Reilly, host of The O'Reilly Factor, and his latest book, another bestseller, New York Times, Killing Reagan. Bill, thanks for coming on the show.
Sure, Charles.
First, before we start, you've been in the news business for a while. A lot of people are saying what we're seeing now in America, around the world, somewhat unprecedented and somewhat scary. What's your assessment of where we're going?
Well, I don't think it's unprecedented. I think in the Vietnam era at the end of the 1960s, there was an unbelievable amount of turbulence in the United States, more than there is now. So I've seen it before. I think the country will recover. But I think that at this point in history, we're certainly struggling. The United States is certainly struggling.
You know, the 60s begat the 70s, which was not necessarily a good decade. And I think we had to suffer through that to be reborn, if you will. Maybe a lot of people say a Carter gave us a Reagan. Does that mean we've got to suffer a little bit more in this country? Maybe we're still not really sure because we've got conflicting ideologies and we're certainly not on the same page with respect to how we solve the problems that we have.
Well, you certainly have a diverse, much more diverse American population now than you did in the 60s. So that is going to take a while to shake out. Americans are divided, yeah, but I don't think as much as the pundits like to put forth. I think most Americans want to do right by their families. They want to see their country prosper and their neighbors prosper. I believe that. But I think that the extremes are more extreme, although in the late 60s, when I was in college, there were some extremes out there. But I think now, you know, if you say your opinion, you're a racist, you're a bigot, you're this, you're that, all that nasty stuff, driven a lot by the internet with these sneaks who can be anonymous and make these attacks. So, yeah, it's a nasty, we're in a nasty time, there's no doubt about it. But I don't think it's unprecedented.
I guess it boils down, though, to leadership, because I agree with you. I think, you know, when I hear, and I'm on Twitter, I tweet a lot, and I understand the social media situation. It feels like there's so much fear that it can be morphed into anger, animosity, and it's the silver-tongued folks on any side of the aisle, if you want, who have mastered that. And it feels like, how do we get a leader, someone that sort of unites the nation? To your point, it's a lot different than it looked in the 1960s, but we're all, for the most part, Americans who want our kids to do better than we did.
Charismatic leaders are rare. They are. And whether one will emerge this time around, I'm not sure. It'll certainly be a lively election between Hillary Clinton and whoever the Republican nominee is. But, you know, a guy like Reagan, who I wrote about extensively, comes along maybe once every 50 years. Teddy Roosevelt kind of be in that mold. Yeah. Abraham Lincoln. Guys who are really, really devoted to the country and who have a good vision and the ability to convince and persuade Americans. Doesn't come along very often.
Even though we've been in this situation before, even though, you know, listen, history is cyclical, and maybe the 60s looked like this, there are elements that are unique right now. Our debt, the nation, our competition, you know, China's currency was just included in the IMF. They're certainly nipping at our heels. And our military might isn't what it used to be. I mean, I think America probably in many ways peaked in the 1950s. So the idea that we're sort of ordained or that we'll just come back, it's harder to grab or believe in than it was before.
You see, I'm not as pessimistic as you. There's a lot of cash on the sidelines, all right, number one. A lot of money that's just sitting there not being invested. If that money were to be invested, that would give the American economy an enormous surge. Number two, American corporations lead the league in technology. We lead the league in medicine. We lead the league in healthcare as far as products are concerned. So we really have the infrastructure in place. It's a matter of unleashing it. The socialism trend that the Democratic Party has embraced obviously has held us back since Barack Obama is the poster boy for that. All right. Mr. Obama's tenure has been a disaster. He will go down in history as one of the weakest presidents. There's no doubt in my mind that will happen. And I say that as a person who gave him a chance and who doesn't dislike him personally. I mean, he helped me out with the vets. I have a decent relationship with him. But I think the record shows that his economic vision has been terrible, that his foreign policy is chaotic. And if you want to say what its accomplishments are, you got one hand, it might not even fill it. So that's after 7 years. So yeah, we're at a really mediocre point in American history. We need somebody to stimulate the economy, get us back to free market principles, but with oversight. And once that happens, though, I think the roar is there.